and the things that have been said emanating out of Seattle. Pete Carroll, one of his sons is gone. The other one of his sons is a wide receivers coach. Obviously Russell Wilson reportedly is one of the people who feels like you can't tell them anything. That's not what we've heard about Pete Carroll. We know Pete Carroll to be a national champion as a collegiate coach. We know him to be a Super Bowl champion as a head coach. We know that he knows football, and we know that he's an exceptional coach who's done an exceptional job. But in the same breath, we always assumed that he was a player's coach per se, and that doesn't appear to be the case at this particular juncture. At this particular moment in time, Russell Wilson seems to be turned off by Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks organization. It wasn't an off-the-record comment. His agent literally gave Adam Schefter teams that Russell Wilson would be interested in going to after Russell Wilson had said what he said on the Dan Patrick show. So you take all of those things into consideration. I would say, no, he shouldn't stay there. He's been there for 9 years. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's carried the franchise on his back pretty much for the last 5 years, and we all know this because that's when the Legion of Boom basically was diminishing before our very eyes, and they were on their way out. So when I look at it from that perspective, I say no, he shouldn't want to be there. Russell Wilson should want to go to the Dallas Cowboys.
What?
Quote unquote. I mean, are you ready for this? Yes, the Dallas Cowboys. America's.
You can't say that. Of all people can't say the Cowboys.
Well, yeah, I can once you listen to my reasons. I can say that once you hear my reasons. See, when you have to understand, Max Kellerman. First of all, one thing. I just told you he's a Super Bowl champion. He's got a 98-45-1 record in his 9 seasons. That's more win than the Dallas Cowboys organization has had. I think they've got like 78 wins in that span. He's got 98 wins in the last 9 years, okay? And we also know the cachet that his talents would bring. But it's not even that. It's not even so much that. Max Kellerman, when's the last time the Dallas Cowboys have really been relevant? Quarter century, wouldn't you say?
That level, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. And yet everyone talks about him. We recognize the fact that Forbes magazine had them as the highest valued franchise in the National Football League, if not in all of American sports, at approximately $5 billion. We understand the billion-dollar playpen that is Jerry World, Jerry Jones, and the attention that he garners, the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. Let's never forget that. We've got all of that going on in the backdrop of the star, the Dallas Cowboys playing on Thanksgiving, whatever. If you don't deserve any level of relevancy based on your level of production on the football field, and yet still you get it time and time and time again. If you're Russell Wilson, imagine how you imagine how you would stand to benefit. If you were a member of the Dallas Cowboys, you would obviously be in the midst of a marketing machine. You would receive your just due in terms of attention, in terms of cachet, not to mention the nationally televised games. The list goes on and on. You got a beautiful wife in Sierra who's an entertainer extraordinaire, okay? I have no doubt in my mind that all of this noise about Russell Wilson wishing to depart from Seattle has a lot to do with her, as well it should. Happy wife, happy life. Listen to the ladies, okay? Let's make sure we do that. I see it all coming together. If I were Russell Wilson, the ideal place for him to play, because he has nothing to prove. We know he's great, and we know he's going to continue to be great. And as a result of that reality, the bottom line is if you were playing for a team like the Dallas Cowboys with all the unwarranted attention they garner, he would actually make them relevant. He would actually make them, valid in terms of their attention and the notoriety that they receive. And I think that in that regard, that's what makes it a winning situation for him more so than anything else. That's why I mentioned the Dallas Cowboys.
First of all, you have a right to say he shouldn't stay in Dallas, but you do not have a right to say, you don't even have a right to say he should go to Dallas. Saying he shouldn't stay in Seattle, I get for the reasons you outlined. I disagree. I'll get to that in a second. But the Dallas Cowboys, Stephen A., I thought a black cat was running around that franchise. I thought they were cursed. You bring it up. Their record is 20 games worse than Russell Wilson's record, right? But look at the quarterbacks who've played for them. Tony Romo and Dak Prescott. Now, is Russell Wilson better than those guys? Has he been over that time? He has been. To the tune of 2-3 games a season? No. He doesn't give you 2 to 3 games a season better than those guys. What this indicates, Stephen A. Smith, is that he's in a winning situation. He contributes a lot to it for sure. But the Seattle Seahawks are basically a well-run, very well-run franchise, one of the best in football. Had it not been for the Patriots during the course of Russell Wilson's career, they'd be in the argument. They'd certainly be in the argument for the best run team in football. Certainly they are for the best run team in the NFC. So now you want them to go to the Cowboys, perpetually dysfunctional team. Again, the difference in record, you can't just attribute to the quarterback. They've had good quarterbacks. How much of a premium he's going to give? Now, your point about maybe it's Sierra, maybe it's, a career opportunity, legacy in terms of branding after his career. Point well taken. But is that more important to Russell Wilson than becoming great? You know what I think Russell Wilson wants? I think he wants to be the greatest of all time. Russell Wilson is insanely competitive. And if he were in a situation where year in and year out, you're hoping to be above 500, maybe you can win a playoff game, he'll be miserable. He may feel that that's the case in Seattle right now. And maybe in the last couple of years, it has felt that way. Well, they'll get to the playoffs and they'll lose because the O-line isn't good enough, or the O-line gets a little better now, the defense isn't good enough. But this is a double-digit win team year in and year out, and that's not all because of Russell Wilson. It's because it's a well-run franchise. Careful what you wish for. You made more sense last week when you said New Orleans. If Russell Wilson's like, New Orleans, I think they're ready to win now. You put me on that team, it'll get them over the top. I can't really argue. I might say, hey, you got a good thing going in Seattle. You've won a Super Bowl there. You got to another. You may win another one there. You're still in your prime. But I can't really argue against the Saints. But the Cowboys and Stephen A., if he's upset about getting hit too much, that offensive line ain't the same anymore in Dallas. I don't get the Cowboys at all.
Well, that's because you're thinking football, which is what I was thinking when I mentioned the Saints. But clearly something else is going on here. As you've read the continued reports emanating out of Seattle, I mean, let's think about this, Max. They're a perennial playoff team. He's gone to 2 Super Bowls, won a Super Bowl title. He's playing for a coach that's highly respected in Pete Carroll. All right, we've recognized the fact that he's deserved the accolades that he has received, and he's recognized universally as one of the top quarterbacks in the National Football League. And oh, by the way, the state of Washington, no state income tax. I mean, listen, there's no reason for him to leave from a football perspective. It makes total sense for him to want to stay. Yet we hear about the relationships. We hear that he wants out. Okay, you see the mayor of New Orleans pitching for him to come there. The mayor of Seattle's like, nah, step back. He's ours, et cetera, et cetera. You got all of this kind of stuff going on. But the Dallas Cowboys were on that list. And if he's on that list, that tells me he's thinking about more than football. It also tells me his wife is playing a pivotal role, as she should. As she should. Okay? So all of those things taken into consideration, I'm thinking from a marketing perspective, clearly he's not satisfied. And he thinks there's a better place to be. In light of that, there's nowhere to go but up, because you'd go to a franchise that hasn't done a damn thing in a quarter century. You're playing with house money.
That's one. What you just point out is legit. That's one. Marketing, the Dallas Cowboys, the brand is huge.
I'm not talking football.
Now let's talk off the field. That's one component off the field. But if another component is being respected, wanting input and all that, look what just happened to Dak Prescott with the Cowboys. Do you think he feels respected right now by this team?
Not at all.
I just don't get Dallas. I get what you're saying about the star, the Cowboys, the brand, but that's the only thing I see in Dallas for Russell Wilson.
Yep. Vegas, New Orleans, Chicago also in the mix as well. We shall see, fellas. Another superstar who's a little frustrated. That's where I want to go now. So last night, LeBron and the Lakers put the smackdown on the Warriors in L.A. with Clay watching courtside, a 26-point win. Steph, talk to me.
We have to remember that even when we're playing well, we won 3 in a row. Teams still want to beat us and beat us bad. They still have a lot of memories from the last 5-6 years.
Stephen A., you think the Warriors are just going to make the league pay when Clay returns?
Without question. Without question. Let me tell you something right now. Once Klay Thompson returns, we're assuming health. We're not debating health. There's nothing to debate about that. If they're not healthy, there's no go. But if Klay Thompson and Steph Curry on the court together and healthy, Warriors going to conference finals. at the very least. Warriors going to win 50 games at the very least. The Warriors will unquestionably, we talk about the Utah Jazz being the best shooting team in the NBA. That wouldn't be the case if Clay and Steph were on the court. I promise you that much. That wouldn't happen then. You can book it. Let me tell you something right now. And by the way, this kid Wiseman, who's just a rookie, the number 2 overall pick, Jaja Pajulia and Andrew Bogut, he is not. He can actually play. I mean, not to say that they couldn't play at all, but they ain't no James Wiseman. This kid's got a tremendous upside. When I look at the team as presently constructed, if you told me that Klay Thompson comes back, but you still have a Kelly Oubre, and you still have an Andrew Wiggins, and you got a James Wiseman, and you got Pascal, and you got, Draymond Green and these boys, with Steph and Klay healthy? Oh, please. You're going to the conference finals. Easily. And I'm telling you that right now. They understand everybody's going to come at them. When Steph is balling, it's a different game. When he's struggling a little bit, as he has over the last 7 or 8 meetings against the Los Angeles Lakers, where they've held him under 20 points, that's a different ball game. But when Klay and Steph are on the court together, this is the greatest shooting backcourt in NBA history. And Steph Curry is the greatest shooter since man was created. That's who he is. And Klay ain't that damn far behind, okay? I'm telling you right now. Klay and Steph get back together healthy, you're at the very least, conference finals.
They're not making the league pay when Klay gets back. That's different, Stephen A. You're starting to move the goalposts about what make the league pay means. Like, are they going to win 50 games? Or are they going to be a tough out? For sure. Might they, if they add the right pieces, win another championship eventually? Sure. But what the Warriors were, what Steph is talking about that stretch where people want payback, they were stomping the league, starting with that 73-win team, because even the year before when they won the title, Cleveland was going to beat them in the finals if Kyrie and Kevin Love were healthy for LeBron. I mean, they went 6 games without them. But that season, too, they were better than everyone else in the Western Conference. And then the following year, they smoked everybody else. And then they added Kevin Durant. And those days ain't coming back. I mean, if they're able to swing a move for a guy like a Durant-level player, or not that many who ever existed, right, to add to this team, okay, fine, those days can come back. But if we're just talking about the roster, more or less as is, and Klay healthy and Steph healthy, like Draymond Green is not what he once was quite. I mean, even just shooting, Stephen A., and this predates any issues with KD or Klay in terms of injuries. Draymond Green was like shooting 33, 34% from 3. Remember that one year he shot 38, 39%? He shot under 31% from 3 since then. He does not shoot from the outside. The idea that you can play 5 out with Draymond, not really, not the way it once looked like they were going to be able to. So this is a different team, and this coincides, right? No Iguodala in his prime, was a great player and a big game player. So things have really changed. Obviously, no KD. Even if Klay comes back, he's coming back to a Western Conference that ain't your big brother's Western Conference. The Lakers are a powerhouse with AD. All these other teams have come up in the world. If there's no OKC like there once was, don't forget OKC took them 7 games when the Warriors had won 73 that year. Took them 7 games to Oracle in the Western Conference Finals. But look at all these teams. Denver's coming up. You mentioned Utah's coming up. The Clippers, it is a new day for the Clippers. The Lakers are the defending champs. They're never going to do to the Western Conference what they used to do. They're not making people pay like that anymore. It is a new time, Stephen A.
Well, you can say that. We don't know that definitively because, again, we'll see when Klay Thompson gets back. That's number one. Number two, the league has adjusted. What did the Utah Jazz did? After losing in the first round of Denver last year, they went out and they got some shooters. And they improved as shooters as well. Yeah, you got defense on the interior as well as on the perimeter with Gobert and Royce O'Neal. But in the end, you got guys shooting lights out, and the pickup of Bogdanovich was a big-time pickup. We recognize that. So you got people trying to emulate what the Golden State Warriors used to do. Even LeBron James, excluding the month of February, where he was god-awful from three-point range at about 16%. The bottom line is that he's been shooting better from the 3 than we've seen him do, arguably, in his entire career. So we're paying attention. But who are the originators? Who are the pioneers in the modern era when it comes to the three-point shooting artistry? that would be the Golden State Warriors. Now, in Draymond's case, he's got something to work on because what you pointed out, Max, in 2015, 2016, he shot 38% from three-point range. Since then, it's 30, 28, 27, and it's now at 22.4%.
And you can't even say it's Clay's injury because it predates Clay's injury.
Well, I understand that. So that's something that's the impediment to Draymond. I think he does everything else great, but shooting the basketball definitely is not his thing. In the end, though, what I think about is the presence of Clay and Steph and what that would open up for Wiseman. What that would open up for an Oubre, a Wiggins, a Pascal, or anybody else. I think about this shooting not just from three. I think about this shooting not just from the perimeter, but I think about what just the near perfection that they put forth from the free throw line. I'm telling you right now, Max, I would sit here and I'd have a hard time looking at the Golden State Warriors and definitively saying ain't no way they get to the finals. Look, they might get to the finals next year if they're healthy.
Let's maybe, but I don't think so. Let's go over that roster that you mentioned. Wiseman is promising. He doesn't shoot free throws great, by the way, which may be a better indicator of long-term success from three, but he's shooting better already than we thought. I like Wiseman as a piece at the five. You're right. They have not had someone like that in the past. That's an improvement. Oubre's okay. Wiggins is fine, not compared to his salary, but he could play. But back once upon a time, Stephen A., Steph and Clay were the undisputed best backcourt in the league. That's not the case anymore. You have Kyrie and James Harden. You have Dame and McCollum. It's all on the same level, and you could argue some better. You have CP3 and Devin Booker. You have other pairs that are comparable to that. Maybe not quite with the shooting, although some of them shoot very, very well. But they're comparable in terms of value in the backcourt. Now there's no KD on the team. And unless you have a piece like that, and there aren't that many of them, that's now gone. Draymond's not shooting. So you're looking at the rest of the roster and you're going, that's tough. You're right. That's a 50-win team. That's a powerhouse in the West. But the days of them spanking the Western Conference the way they did are over.
I disagree.
All right. Steph Curry has the fourth best odds to win MVP, fellas. That according to Caesars. When we come back here on First Take, there's a new Drew Brees video circulating. A workout video? Should the Saints Sooners? Meanwhile, in the NFL, Drew Brees is retiring or not. His trainer, Todd Durkin, recently posted a video on Instagram that shows Brees pushing a weighted sled while Durkin, uttering a string of superlatives, apparently things he hasn't seen from Brees before. On that note, we welcome an NFL insider, Kimberly Martin. Kimberly, thank you so much for being with us this morning, entertaining, educating us all morning on Get Up. I was watching you do your thing, so glad to have you with us as well. I will get to you in just a moment, but we're going to start with the fellas here. Max, do you think the Saints should want Drew Brees back?
No, I think the Saints should hope that Drew Brees retires. You can keep doing the same thing again and again because it looks on the surface like the best option. Well, we think he's still better than Taysom Hill, say, or we don't really think Taysom Hill can be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Okay, but neither can Drew Brees at this point. I'm sorry, but we've seen it too often now in the playoffs. The season may be too long for him at his age and his size. Don't forget, like Tom Brady, I talked about the clip and everything. Tom Brady's a big, strong guy. Drew Brees is a smaller guy playing a brutal full-contact sport. And speaking of brutality, had all those ribs crushed and his lung punctured and everything. And I thought maybe there's a silver lining. Maybe he'll be more rested and won't look as bad as he's looked in the playoffs in recent years. Because I really looked at this Saints team and thought, this is the best chance he'll have to win a Super Bowl. This is it. And maybe the best chance he's had in years, given the fact that they had a number 2 receiver. They had a hot defense. They were probably the most well-rounded team until it turns out the Bucs at the time. And they had a tie score going into the fourth quarter against Tom Brady, against a team that they'd beaten twice already. The second time worse than the first time. Couldn't get it done. Brady got it done. Brees couldn't. And he couldn't get it done because he couldn't make the plays. Let's just be honest about it. Drew Brees is one of my all-time favorites. But you got to be honest about it. Stephen A., you know what it's like? Sometimes you'll see a prize fight. I know you're a big fight fan. And a guy has trained a certain way to box responsibly and everything. It's just not working. And he gets back to the corner and the guy's like, double the jab and do this and do everything. And you're like, dude, that ain't going to work. Look, even though it may seem foolish because you'll get knocked out even faster, you better throw caution to the wind because that's the only chance you have. The Saints, unlike the Steelers and a lot of teams are built to win a Super Bowl right now. They're not going to do it with Drew Brees. So even if you think Taysom Hill maybe gives them a lesser chance superficially, even if it's Taysom Hill, at least he gives you a puncher's chance. Drew Brees, I don't think you have a chance to win a Super Bowl right now.
Well, I think you're wrong. I think they have a chance. Obviously, at age 42, you do need to be moving in a different direction. The problem is that what you're going to go out and get. If you're going to tell me I'm going to lose Drew Brees, who, by the way, completed 70% of his passes in the 12 games that he played, threw for 24 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions. That's not something to sneeze at. I'm certainly not going to accuse Drew Brees of being what he used to be, and I understand that. But as much as I like Taysom Hill, as much as we've not given up on Jameis Winston, assuming you could get him back and what have you, the bottom line is that what do you have? What's the alternative? I think based on what you have available to you, I certainly could see Drew Brees coming back. I certainly don't mind if he does it. Me personally, if he retired, I wouldn't mind that either. But I think that based on what your options are, I see no issue whatsoever. If the Saints sat up there and said Drew Brees is coming back, I don't think you'd see the mayor calling for Russell Wilson, even though Russell Wilson at this point in time in his career, particularly due to his mobility, not just his ability to throw the football, but his mobility, I definitely think you'd prefer him over Drew Brees. But I don't think you'd see public officials in New Orleans clamoring for somebody else's quarterback if Drew Brees, if everybody knew that Drew Brees was coming back. Because when you look at this man throw the football, the accuracy with which he does it, Michael Thomas didn't have the same kind of year because he was in and out this year. Emmanuel Sanders didn't have the year that we expected him to. And so we got to take that into consideration as well. Do I think that they could be better next year than even they were this year? Yeah, I think they could do that. And I think in the case of Tom Brady, you ain't beating Tom Brady 3 times in the same season. You shellacked him 2 times in a regular season. Obviously, come playoff time, he got the better of you. You're going up against Tom Brady on 3 separate occasions, and you beat him the first 2 times. Chances are he's going to get you once. And that's what happened there. And I don't think it was just about Drew Brees. I think it was about Sean Payton's game planning. I think it was about the lack of production this year from Michael Thomas compared to what we're accustomed to seeing from him. I think all of those things played a role. So I wouldn't give up on Drew Brees, but it's primarily because of the options that they have available to you. If you could get Russell Wilson, sure, you get him. But if you can't get somebody of that caliber, I'd say you stick with Drew Brees rather than handing the reins to Taysom Hill. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I wish this question was, should the Saints go after Russell Wilson? Because that's an easy one. That makes sense. I think the Saints are caught between a rock and a hard place because it's almost like Pittsburgh, except the money isn't the same with Big Ben. I argued on Get Up a couple weeks ago or last week that, I think that they're going to restructure Big Ben because what else are the Steelers going to do? What other options do they have? The Saints, though, they have Breeze and a lot less, financially, like a lot less money they got to spend on his salary. He just reduced it. The problem is the window is closing on this team. Maybe not in 2021, but thereafter. I think this is the year. If Breeze wants to come back, God bless him. But like Max said, the injuries, I think at some point we're going to be looking at Drew and wondering, okay, is he going to be able to give you 16 games? I don't think he can. At some point, you might have Taysom Hill having to start, or Jameis Winston, who 5,000 yards, he's not that far removed from 5,000 yards and 35 touchdowns. So let's not throw Jameis away, but the options are just so bad that it makes the fact that this is even a question, that shows where the Saints are. That 42-year-old Drew Brees, should he come back? That's what we're debating.
Well, I actually think Taysom Hill's a little slept on. Like he was 3-1 as a quarterback. That was his quarterback record. He completed over 70% of his passes. Obviously, things are simpler in terms of the passing game with him. But it was, it's not like he was throwing over 200 yards a game. He threw, twice as many touchdowns as interceptions, though that wasn't a very high number. I mean, I think the difference between the Steelers and New Orleans, other than financially, Kimberly, is the New Orleans Saints are ready to win a Super Bowl right now. They need better quarterback play. I mean, they need a little more health, yes, but they need better quarterback play. And so you say, well, Taysom Hill's not going to be better than Drew Brees, but at least he gives you a different dimension than Drew Brees. As I said earlier, more of a puncher's chance. You look at the Steelers, you go, ugh, what they got. You might as well take Roethlisberger, but you ain't going to win a Super Bowl anyway. The Saints, you go, no, actually, the options they have behind Drew Brees are quite respectable, and they're ready to win now. So Stephen A., I don't know. I think Russell Wilson, people might be calling for Russell Wilson in New Orleans anyway. In fact, when I heard the mayor, I was thinking, it's a little disrespectful to Drew Brees because it's not official yet. And then on the other hand, let's be honest. Anyone at this point in their career especially would make that trade. Of course they would love to have Russell Wilson in New Orleans. Stephen A., as you argued last week.
Well, like I said, I'm not disagreeing with it. Ain't nobody saying that we'd keep Drew Brees over Russell Wilson, but you'd have to trade for Russell Wilson. And let's not forget, his contract is also incredibly attractive. Got about 3 years and approximately $7 million. That's bargain basement for star quarterbacks in today's NFL climate in terms of what quarterbacks are getting paid. So that's also another attractive situation to bring into the equation. In the end, though, the point is that you have Drew Brees. And I'm saying, based on the alternatives available to you, you don't summarily dismiss a guy that completes 70% of his passes on a year-to-year basis. The man doesn't make too many mistakes. Now, he's made some mistakes during the playoffs, and we get all of that. But there's something to say about giving you a puncher's chance, and he certainly gives you that because of what he produces for you during the regular season. And are we just going to sit here and ignore Michael Thomas? I love Michael Thomas. He's got mad game. A year ago, we were calling him arguably the best receiver in football, and he has signed a $20 million a year contract as a wide receiver. Well, guess what? He didn't live up to it this year, primarily due to injuries, no doubt. But we're just going to ignore that? We're going to ignore that the number one weapon that Drew Brees had available to him wasn't looking like himself for most of this year either? I don't think we get to do that. Am I wrong in saying that, Kimberly?
No, you're not wrong at all. And, to Max's point about the Saints being a win-now team, and to then go with Taysom Hill, who, he was 3-1 as a starter, but are we really set on Taysom Hill? Are we really set on Jameis Winston? This is a win-now team. If you slide Drew Brees back, I don't think he gives you 16 games, but at least the other guys, they've got a lot of free agent issues, a lot of free agent questions, and they're in salary cap hell at the moment. So if you slide Drew Brees back in, and you say, okay, let's try to, with this roster, try to run it back, that gives you a better shot than, let's hope Jameis Winston doesn't turn the ball over to the other team 30 times. Let's hope that Taysom Hill protects the football a little bit better than he has been. But neither option, they're not good, guys. They're not good.
Guys, let just throw this out to end this segment. In his first 4 years in the league, Michael Thomas has played in at least 15 games a year. This year, he only played in 7. He had his first 4 years, 92 receptions, 104 receptions, 125 receptions, 149 receptions in 2019 for 1137, 1245, 1405 in 2019, 149 receptions for 1,725 yards. This past season, he started 5 games of the 7 he played in. He had 40 receptions for 438 yards. Michael Thomas wasn't there this year.
That's a good point.
How we going to look at Drew Brees and just ignore the fact Michael Thomas really wasn't
I'm looking
there.
at the last 4 or 5 playoffs with Drew Brees, though. At a certain point, he ain't going to get you over the top.
All right, guys, we got to go. We know who the New Orleans mayor wants. That's for sure. Kimberly, thank you so much for being with us. I know it's been a busy morning for you. Appreciate the time. And check out more with Kimberly on First Take, Her Take, helping you get through your hump day. Every Wednesday, there is a new episode. When we come back here on First Take, Mike Tomlin speaking out on the lack of black coaches. But to the NFL we go. Minorities represent 69% of NFL players and 35% of assistant coaches, but yet only 3 head coaches are black men. Steelers coach Mike Tomlin, Dolphins coach Brian Flores, and recently hired Texans coach David Culley. Mike Tomlin expounded on this grave reality, telling the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, quote, "The optimist in me says things will get better, but there's been no evidence in the recent cycles to back that up. Without evidence, all we have is hope. We just haven't been able to move the needle." And he added that Bieniemy has yet to matriculate to the next level, that's a real head scratcher to him. Obviously, we know how successful Bieniemy has been. Stephen A., do you think star players, so we've heard from coaches, do you think star players need to be more vocal about the lack of black head coaches in the NFL?
Hell yes. It should have been the case. And I'm not going to call out names or whatever because I don't know, the folks who may have done so or those who are doing it behind the scenes, more power to them. But when you talk about giving a voice to the voiceless, which is something that has been popularized throughout American history when it comes to discrimination or racist practices, the fact of the matter is that being silent or just operating behind the scenes, although that can be productive, you have to speak out at some point. At least somebody does. And the reality is that when it comes to black coaches in the NFL, as well as in the National Basketball Association, they're few and far between. Avery Bradley and Kyrie Irving are guys that I'd like to give credit to in the offseason before bubble play, because they were trying to bring attention to the paucity of black coaches in the National Basketball Association because the numbers were dwindling before our very eyes, and we didn't hear anything. That's always been the case in the National Football League. As of right now, the year is 2021. There are 3 black head coaches. 3. That's it. Mike Tomlin, Brian Flores in Miami, and of course David Culley, who's the new head coach for the Houston Texans, who's been in the league for 27 years before he got a head coaching job. Robert Saleh for the Jets, he came over as a defense coordinator from the San Francisco 49ers to get the head coaching job, born in Michigan, raised of Lebanese descent, Lebanese parents, what have you. Not African-American, but nevertheless it's a minority hire. Of course, the previous year, Ron Rivera, well-respected and recognized, got hired in the nation's capital by the Washington football team, but he was the only minority hire the year before that. The league is 70% black. It's a multi-billion-dollar establishment. They're talking about how this league could generate in excess of $25 billion a year, at least before the pandemic. That's what they were talking. And yet, considering how popular this league is, nothing has happened, and no player says anything about it. The millions upon millions of dollars that they're making, the way they're set and their generations are set, somehow, some way, nobody has the courage to open their damn mouths and speak out about it. And if you remember, Max, I brought this up when it came to even Colin Kaepernick. When Colin Kaepernick took a knee, okay, everybody was in an uproar coming to his defense because he had been marginalized, because he had been essentially blackballed. Well, guess what? I got a slew of black coaches that could say this has been happening to them for decades, but no player said anything. And my last point, Max, Mike Tomlin has been in the National Football League for 14 years as a head coach. His record is 145, 78, and 1. He's won 65% of his games. Max Kellerman, are you aware of any of his assistants who've been hired?
Good point.
But Sean Payton got a tree, and Andy Reid got a tree, and Sean, and the list goes on and on. Sean McVay. They got trees. They got proteges. They got folks sprinkled throughout the league getting jobs. Zach Taylor, no disrespect, wish him nothing but the best in Cincinnati. He got a job there, okay? Where he come from? All I'm just saying is you just look at it, and it's like the unfairness is so flagrant, it's disgusting. And black players should be speaking up. Yes, long time ago.
Well, I agree. I think players, black and white, should be taking the lead here, as LeBron James and Chris Paul and others have done in the NBA. Let's keep in mind what we're dealing with in the NFL, though, Stephen A. Colin Kaepernick, and I mentioned this years ago while it was going on. Remember we did the show in L.A. with Snoop and Magic? Colin Kaepernick was kneeling broadly. Narrowly, it's injustice in terms of law enforcement interactions with communities of color. But broadly, it's about systemic racism, right? And he hasn't had a job since then. He's been drummed out of the league unjustly. Doesn't have anything to do with his play. Right? So that's what the NFL does if you make too much noise about that issue. Now, you might argue, well, the way Kaepernick went about it, he touched a third rail, at least in terms of the NFL and their business, and there are ways of doing it without burning everything down. We could argue about that, but okay, let's say I concede that point. Yes, players should take the lead, but the power structure is completely imbalanced. The reason I think primarily that we see this is there's virtually no minority ownership in the NFL. And is that because the NFL is systematically kind of excluding or rejecting the attempts of minorities to own teams? Or is that because of our country's original sin? You really want it. There's enormous economic inequity in this country based on the fact that black people were once slaves. And not only have there never been reparations made, but in which they are due, which African Americans are due, in my view, and would be better for us societally. But in addition to that, post-slavery, they were also systemically, excluded from the economy in many ways. And so at least the parts of the economy you want to be involved in. And so that's really what we're talking about. The NFL is a reflection of the country in generally. But more specifically, even when you factor that in, 3 African-American head coaches in a league that's 70% African-American? Yes, I think that the league should make this one of its priorities, Stephen A., along with making money. Obviously, that's always going to be their priority, and player health, because that could be something that could affect their business long term. I think this issue can also affect their business because it's beyond the pale at this point.
Well, you've got white owners who hire people who look like them and they're more comfortable with, and we know the code language that they usually use to justify it. That's number one. Number two, you're essentially saying that you don't trust black men to be a leader of men, particularly of men who look like them and share their cultural black background. You don't respect it. You don't trust it. All right. You're more comfortable when you're playing that leadership role, which speaks to the kind of things that you just alluded to, Max Kellerman. And I don't bring up Zach Taylor to knock him. I wish him nothing but the best, along with others. But the reality is, when you look at the job that Eric Bieniemy has done, excluding this Super Bowl performance against Tampa Bay, the bottom line is that this is the 3rd year in a row that he's had a top-rated offense and he can't get a job. He can't get a head coaching job. And then you look at the fact that in Kansas City, even though he's designing the offense, Andy Reid is calling plays half the time. That's being held against him. But in the end, what it comes down to is what I've said repeatedly on this show, and I'll close by saying this. When George Floyd had that knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and people throughout this nation were lamenting what they saw, what I said to folks when you saw black folks protesting in the streets throughout America was that when people talked about they had enough is enough, they ain't just talking about brutality on the part of some police officers against unarmed black men. You were also talking from a figurative perspective in corporate America and other places where black folks continuously feel like we have that knee on our neck. We're marginalized, we're pigeonholed, we're diminished in a lot of different ways and not held with the same regard, and the level of meritocracy that's supposed to be taking place doesn't exist for us. And this is just the latest example. And the fact that black athletes who are elite and well paid don't have either the courage or the sensitivity to speak up about it, leaving it to folks like me and a few others, and you as well, Max, is a damn shame. They make enough money. The dollars are guaranteed. They don't have to worry about it. Open your damn mouth. You speak about everything else, especially on Twitter and Facebook and all that other stuff. Where the hell are you? Open your damn mouths and speak up and show some damn courage.
Facts. We'll leave it on that note. Speaking of someone that does open their mouth and is very involved with social activism, that would be LeBron James. Another superstar athlete is really Old Miss. NFL news. Our Adam Schefter reported last week that Russell Wilson had not asked for a trade, but did let the Seahawks know a list of teams he would consider if they wanted to trade him. Deshaun Watson has asked for a trade from the Texans, although they are telling teams they have no plans to do so. Meanwhile, Dak is at an impasse with the Cowboys in negotiations for a long-term deal. Max, which quarterback should have the biggest beef with their team? Would you say Dak, Russ, or Deshaun?
You asking me, Molly?
Yes.
Yeah, Max, yep.
Deshaun Watson. The answer is Deshaun Watson. And please spare me his team gave him $160 million. Any team in the league, yes, including Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys, was going to give Deshaun Watson all that money because unlike Dak Prescott, he's not a good quarterback who you're hoping might become great, but represents the franchise well and all that stuff. He represents the franchise well and all that stuff, but he's a great quarterback right now. And maybe he's not even in his prime yet. Deshaun Watson is exactly who you want as quarterback if you don't have Patrick Mahomes. Like in the entire league, when you factor in age and everything. This is the dude you want. Every team was going to pay him. Every team. He owes no special allegiance to the Texans because they happen to be the team that drafted him. Why does Deshaun Watson want out in the first place? Because he was lied to. I mean, forget about the fact that they trade DeAndre Hopkins. And he finds out about it after the fact, right? That's his dude. That's one of the best receivers in football. And they're boys on top of it. But then you promise him. You sit down and promise him after you fire Bill O'Brien, reportedly, you promise him that he will have input into the coaching and the GM search, right? And did he? No, it was completely ignored. In fact, the Texans, McNair paid search firms to find candidates. And when those candidates came back, and by the way, some of them were not white, they were all rejected in favor of the guy really running the entire show right now, Jack Easterby, who was formerly the team's chaplain. That's the guy running the show, and that's the guy apparently the force behind pushing DeAndre Hopkins out the door. And Jack Easterby may have been an amazing chaplain. I don't know that qualifies him to run an NFL team. You know, you can have a dentist you really like, but you're not going to have him, do your taxes necessarily, right? So I think that Deshaun Watson is in the situation where he actually is the guy with the biggest legitimate beef. He is in a losing situation, and that's not going to turn around by the looks of things anytime soon.
Max Kellerman, believe it or not, easy answers would be Watson, obviously Dak Prescott, because of the way he feels the lack of appreciation and respect, and as well he should. But believe it or not, at this particular moment, for this day, I'm going to actually go with Russell Wilson. And I'm going to tell you why I'm going to go with Russell Wilson. Because look at all he's done and all he's accomplished. You do get to a point, and I'm very serious when I say this, Max. Excuse me. Think about what we just finished talking about in terms of black coaches. Well, now, Max, let's expand that conversation. Not that it has anything to do with it, but I'm just talking about as a black man how you feel. If you're Russell Wilson, you can reach a point where, what more can I do? I've been a model citizen. I don't get in any trouble. I represent this organization with sheer perfection. Go Hawks is the period to every sentence that comes out of my mouth during every interview. I've gone to 2 Super Bowls. I've won a Super Bowl title. I've carried this franchise on my back. You've got a very workable contract situation with me. And all I did was walk into your office and talk to you about how can we prevent me from getting hit. I've been sacked 394 times, okay, over my career. I've been hit over 1,100 times. I'm starting to feel it. Could you help me here? And he ends up walking out of the office disgusted and feeling like he was summarily dismissed and not listened to, if you believe the reports. I haven't spoken to Pete Carroll or anybody. I don't know. I'm only going by the report, so I think it's important to say that. But what I'm saying is, if you feel that way, that's entirely different. You're Dak Prescott. You got 4 years in the league. You got a nasty ankle injury. Yeah, Jerry Jones should have took care of you, but we understand from a business perspective with you coming off that nasty injury, if he has the mentality, let's see what you got, it ain't the worst thing in the world. You're Deshaun Watson. You just got your money last year. Evidently, whatever happened was a product of what transpired this last season, in which Bill O'Brien ultimately ended up leaving. Even though we had Bill O'Brien, problems with Bill O'Brien staying. Even though we wondered why every year some other coach or even a GM, the former GM Rick Smith, was gone, but somehow, some way, Bill O'Brien stayed on board. You lost Bob McNair, who passed away in 2018. God rest his soul, but now his son's taking over. So there's a lot of things that transpire within the organization, and it could just be a bit haphazard. So even though he wants out and you don't blame him, in the same breath, it could be relatively new. If you're Russell Wilson, this is Pete Carroll. This is my man. This is the only coach we ever had here. How the hell do I do all of this? We supposed to have this relationship, and then all of a sudden, I find myself wanting to get the hell up out of here because I'm being treated like I'm somebody that didn't throw 40 touchdowns, that didn't pass for over 4,000 yards, that hasn't led this team for years. You do get to a point, particularly as a black man, where, excuse me, you can hold whatever you want against me, but once I honor the merits of whatever situation you put before me, and I show, despite the obstacles, that I can adapt, adjust, and ultimately overcome. When am I going to get mine? Meaning respect. And I think that's where Russ is here right now mentally, and that's why I would say he's the one with the biggest beat
talk about
this immediate moment.
I don't agree with this at all. Let's talk about the issues, possible issues. First of all, you brought up race. These are 3 African-American quarterbacks. We can control for race because race, you could argue, is an issue in each case. If you want to argue it's an issue for Russell Wilson, and you've alluded to that maybe with Dak and the Cowboys, and well, I mean, you just talked about especially for a black man in Russell Wilson's case.
I'm just talking about what you feel, but I'm not saying that race has anything to do with it.
No, I understand, but there's a racial component to it from that point of view, potentially with all 3. Okay, so you could put that aside for a second when you're comparing who should have the biggest beef. Now let's talk about money. Well, then Dak, right? Because Dak has not gotten his contract. Russell Wilson's contract looks good now, but when he signed it, it was top of the market. He got to that second contract. It was huge. Same thing with Deshaun Watson. You know what the difference is here, Stephen A? Russell Wilson has been in a winning situation. Russell Wilson, you mentioned it, won a Super Bowl, got to another Super Bowl, perennially winning double digits, in position. I think if Jamal Adams had been healthy this year, they'd have had a good chance to make a little playoff run. You know, that's not Deshaun Watson. In certain respects, it's a similar situation, but Deshaun Watson's in a losing position. And even when they were winning, Stephen A., it was so much about what Deshaun Watson was doing. It was so much Deshaun. And then they have a 4-win season, and it's because they make bonehead after bonehead decision in the front office where it's not like we're looking back now and saying, you know, in retrospect, that was a bad idea. When they made the decisions, we're like, what are they doing? And then it panned out that way. So Russell Wilson, say what you will, he's going to the playoffs, and he knows it in Seattle. And maybe he might make a Super Bowl. Deshaun Watson sitting there going, I got no shot in this place. And what's crazy to me, Stephen A., is since he wants out no matter what, their only chance to really rebuild that thing is to trade him, get at least 3 first-round picks, and get to work.
And my response to you is you would need to listen to the question. The question is the biggest beef. I understand that he's in a situation where he can't win football games. I get that. But his beat, because you guess what? They haven't won but so much any damn way. And in the Dallas Cowboys case, they haven't won in recent memory. We get all of that. The biggest beef, in other words, I've got a problem with you. Excuse me, I have produced. Why am I having these issues, Pete Carroll? Why am I having issues with your son? I'm just saying there's something that transcends just the field of play. It might be about the field of play, but in terms of how you are treated, how you are respected, how your counsel is received, etc. That's what we're talking about here.
We saw it with Tom Brady.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, we saw it with Tom Brady in Tampa.
Tom Brady had that beat in New England. Of course. We can point that. They ain't the only ones, but as of right now, that's what appears to be going on with Russell Wilson, and that's what I don't think that can be ignored. If Russell Wilson can't receive the respect that he thinks he deserves, that's a problem, because that's not something that should happen.
Russell Wilson, the only quarterback in NFL history to produce a winning season, his first 9 seasons in the NFL, and most touchdown passes and touchdown runs tied with Peyton Manning. So he certainly has the numbers. We'll leave it there when we come back here on All-Star Julius Randle scored 25 points. R.J. Barrett added 21 to lead the Knicks to a 109-90 victory over the Pistons on Sunday night. The Knicks have won 3 of their last 4. This win puts them in 4th place in the Eastern Conference. And I also want to mention this, guys. Under Tom Thibodeau, obviously his first season there, they have this, look at Stephen A's face, they have the 2nd-ranked defense in the NBA. Last year, they were 23rd, so quite the jump, and kudos to Tibbs. All right, Max, what do you think? Are the Knicks back?
Are the Knicks back? No, the Knicks being back would mean Max. They stink, as always. The Knicks, when you think Knicks, you think stinking team. That's been the majority of their history at this point, certainly of their recent history. This is something new. I'm not going to sit here and deny the truth. They're a young, exciting team. The culture seems healthy. It looks like Dolan finally got out of the way. I thought they had a must-win game, actually, against Sacramento when they hosted Sacramento, because they're 2 games under 500. You got to win that kind of game if you want to make the playoffs. They've done nothing but win since then. Stephen A. quickly has been a revelation. I think the Derrick Rose move was really good. You don't just want a lot of young guys like Julius Randle is shooting from distance now. That's the big change in his game. I don't think you want to make the mistake of just a lot of young guys. You need to bring in the right kind of veteran who's been through it all, who's willing to mentor and work hard. That's what Derrick Rose is. My hat's off to this young team. They're a game over 500. They're fourth place in the conference. But to say, are the Knicks back? No, this is something new. Are the Knicks back? It means, oh, look, there goes the Knicks, the laughing stock of the league. This is new.
Hey, man, you can turn it any way you want to. Back, forward, slide, and moonwalk. I don't give a damn. As long as you recognize the fact that there's something happening in Madison Square Garden. There's something happening in New York City, Max Kellerman. I mean, hey, listen, man. Let me tell you something. You got Julius Randle. He's averaging 23 and 11, shooting nearly 42% from three-point range, okay? I'm pleased. I'm very, very pleased, and he's worthy of being an all-star. I'm just getting a little bit emotional right now. I want to take a moment of time to give my brother Worldwide West, William Wesley, props. The one and only Leon Rose, the president of basketball operations.
Deserve it.
Props. My man Scott Perry, the GM. Props. And, of course, Tom Thibodeau. And, by the way, slight correction, Molly Wood. Slight correction. You know, the New York Knicks are number 2 defensively in terms of defensive efficiency, but they are number 1 defensively in terms of points allowed at 104 points per game. I'm loving what I'm seeing right now. You got Quickly, you got Rose up in there, you got Randall. Oh, by the way, Mitchell Robinson's been hurt, Taj Gibson has been hurt, because you know how a guy like Tom Thibodeau wants somebody on the interior. He wants a big boy there, block shots, grab rebounds, that kind of stuff going on. So I'm looking at a bunch of Rough Riders. I've been hearing the New York Knicks in my ear telling me about culture change, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing hard work. We're seeing a never die attitude. We're seeing Rough Riders. They ain't soft. They're coming at it. They're battling, folks. I'm going to tell you right now, Max, do you know what impediment that I see to the New York Knicks' potential success? Are you sitting down for this? The impediment to their success is also the primary reason they've been successful thus far. That's Tom Thibodeau, my buddy Tom Thibodeau. Why do I say that? Why do I see that? Here's the deal. No, not at all. But here's what I'm saying. You got Julius Randle. He played like 41 minutes against Indiana. What the hell you got him playing 38 minutes last night for? Why is he in the game when they running away against the hapless Detroit Pistons? Why would you do that? This is what Thibodeau has done in the past, because he's about tomorrow, today and tomorrow, not looking ahead. This is the problem that he had in Chicago. I want him to learn from that.
Yeah, you're saying he's going to burn him out. You're afraid of that. Yeah, he's very intense.
Hold on.
Stephen,
you got to take your foot off the gas just a little bit. I know they're young. I know they got their fresh legs, but don't run him into the ground like that. He's got to be careful. Nerlens Noel, I know he doesn't play much, but damn, you got him 41 minutes, all of that other stuff, back-to-back night stuff like that. He's got to be careful.
But he plays.
But other than that, Max, they're only 4 games back of the Brooklyn Nets. Hey, Max, I was watching the numbers the other day. Do you know that if the playoffs began, that it would have been the Knicks against the Nets? But that's when the Knicks were the 7th seed. See, they number 4 now.
Here's the thing. Wait, hold on. Here's the thing.
5th seed, and they host a playoff series.
I got three things to say about this.
I love it.
Number one, what's crazy to me is nationally, the Nets are the story. People outside New York don't care about the Knicks. They care about the Nets. We lead the show with the Nets, never the Knicks. But inside New York, in terms of locally, the Knicks still got it. People get more excited, which brings me to my second point. Stephen A., throughout this pandemic, there's been a lot missed. You know, the enemy is the perfect of the good. We're just happy to have sports. If you can't have crowds, you can't have crowds. And I'm not saying, oh, they should. I'm just saying, could you imagine Madison Square Garden at capacity for this young team? It really is a shame that they don't really get that right now, because Madison Square Garden, when they have a team they can get behind, when New York does, because of effort especially, and intensity, when you know these young guys are working hard and laying it all out there, New York respects that in a different way. It is a shame that that's not happening in front of a raucous, rocking Madison Square Garden.
Negativity, relax.
Well, and thirdly,
the crowd will be there come playoff time. They'll be there.
I have to say, I watched the Knicks game, the whole thing from beginning to end. You know how long it's been since I watched the whole thing? I could sit through the whole thing. I couldn't believe it, but I did. They are a fun team to watch.
They are going at it. They're competing. And listen, when you defend, you have a chance. When you defend, you have a chance. And the one thing they do is defend. And once Mitchell Robinson comes back, watch even more. I'm telling you. I'm telling you right now.
You know when KD and James Harden and Kyrie are all playing? You're not talking about no Knicks.
Listen, let me ask you this question. If the New York Knicks get out of the first round, if they win a first-round series, because if the players started today, they'd play Miami, who's on their own streak. You see how I turned the Miami Heat around? See how I turned them around? I called them out. They've been undefeated ever since. See what I did for the Miami Heat?
That's true. It may be correlation, not causation.
But the Knicks will play the Miami Heat in the first round. Could you imagine if the New York Knicks ended up in the second round and they had to go up against the Brooklyn Nets? The Brooklyn Nets will have all the pressure. The Knicks will be playing with house money. They'd have nothing to lose.
Hey, real quick, Molly, let me say this. You know why the Knicks, and I was laughing at you guys thinking they were going to get KD? Because players don't go to bad cultures. The reason the Nets got those guys is the culture was good. This Knicks team, if they keep doing this, the message they're going to send to potential free agents is it's a good place to play. And then New York sells itself. This could be the first time ever, really, that a top-flight free agent eventually signs with the Knicks. It's possible.
Look at that optimism by you, Max, an angry New Yorker. I'm so impressed with you. They're going to play the Bucks on Thursday. That'll be a good one to check them out as well. All right, when we come back, we got to talk about LeBron James. I've been teasing this all show. So another superstar athlete, on Thursday, AC Milan star Zlatan Ibrahimovic criticized LeBron and other star athletes, saying it was a mistake and doesn't look good when athletes or other famous people get involved in politics. Here's LeBron James responding to those comments.
He was the same guy who said when he was back in Sweden, talking about the same things, because his last name wasn't a certain last name, that he felt like it was some racism going on when he was out on the pitch. I speak from a very educated mind. So I'm kind of the wrong guy to actually go at, because I do my homework. You know, I would never shut up about things that's wrong. I preach about my people, and I preach about, equality, social injustice, racism, systematic voting, voter suppression, things that go on in our community.
All right, Big Perk joining us now for this discussion. Kendrick, great to have you. Stephen A., I'm going to start with you. Do you like, love, or hate LeBron's rebuttal to Zlatan?
I like it. I don't love it. And the reason why I don't love it is that I thought LeBron should have went at him harder. I love the fact that LeBron pointed out his hypocrisy, how this was the same guy who did speak about his name and racist connotations that came along with it, and how he was being prejudiced against in the past. But yet when it came to LeBron James and others, he's speaking about how, folks need to speak to sports. I think that what he was saying, he should have been more specific. He was basically trying to say the black athlete should stick to sports. That's how I took it. And essentially, what are you meaning by that? Because you have a lot of people in this world who look at black men and believe, instead of showing them the deference and respect that they've earned and they deserve, and giving them major props for that, as opposed to doing that, they feel like these athletes should be appreciative and should never feel entitled because of what they've earned. And so you do have a lot of folks out in this world that look at black men who are particularly influential and incredibly powerful, and they feel they should stay in a certain place. They should be more appreciative as opposed to feeling deserving and things of that nature. And I think this shows that, the kind of prejudice that we're accustomed to experiencing as black men, it doesn't just exist in America. I've had the fortune of, particularly with Stephen A's world, of interviewing several people on my show from different other parts of this world, and they talk about how the black experience itself is the black experience. It ain't just in America. It's the world over. And so to me, this is the latest example of that. And I loved how LeBron came back and responded, but I also thought that LeBron was very classy and far too nice compared to what he could have been by an individual that was basically not only telling him to just shut up and play basketball, but he was also an individual that was telling him, you shouldn't be the one doing it, but evidently I could, because when I had an issue, I certainly brought it up, and it didn't have anything to do with the field of play. So it's okay for me to speak on things, but you should know your place. That's how I took it. I think that's how LeBron James took it, and LeBron handled it with the deference, the class, the decorum that obviously nobody can argue with. I'm just saying, if it were me, I'd have been a hell of a lot harsher.
I love LeBron James's response. You like it, Stephen A., because you think he could have gone harder at Zlatan? I love LeBron's response, precisely because he didn't. Because I look, Zlatan's entitled to his opinion, even if we think it's wrong-headed. Now, Stephen A., if you read into it and say, what are you really saying? I get it. But actually, LeBron's measured response, just stating the facts, I think was the most effective possible response. And look what he said. It's on the bottom of the screen. There's no way I would ever just stick to sports. The operative word is because I understand this platform and how powerful my voice is. In other words, if you want to talk about a moral responsibility, if you are a member of an oppressed group historically, then LeBron feels it. That's great. That's great that he responded the way he did. He is not making ad hominem attacks at Zlatan, although he points out, hey, look, you were saying kind of similar stuff where you're from, right? Like you were saying, hey, my last name, whatever else, led to behavior toward me that I didn't like. And what's curious, by the way, LeBron could have gone on. I've heard interviews where, one interview in particular, where Zlatan was asked about Muhammad Ali. And immediately, he's like playing word association. Immediately, he says, the best, the greatest, my idol. And Zlatan is, loud and he celebrates himself the way Ali did. But if Ali's your idol, it's not just because he bragged a lot. It's because Ali stood up for what he believed in and stood for his people and oppression and oppressed groups everywhere, really, by the end of his career. So it is curious that Zlatan has that point of view about Muhammad Ali, had that point of view about himself in Europe, but then has this point of view about LeBron. And LeBron's response to me is pitch perfect. I don't think it could be any better. No ad hominem attack, points out a hypocrisy, says, hey, wait a minute, why is that okay for you, but not okay for me? And most importantly, reinforces the idea that he feels a responsibility to do it. Not just that whether, I can do it, or I should just stay in my lane. No. LeBron saying, I have a responsibility given my platform. Pitch perfect, I have to say, as usual by LeBron.
No, Max, I have to disagree, and that's nonsense. Ain't nothing was pitch perfect about that response. And matter of fact, I hated the response that LeBron James gave, and here's why. He should have addressed Zlatan or whatever his name is, like the numbers on the house, and should have made him smell his cologne in that response. And by me saying that, because it's not about politics. It's not that LeBron James speaks out about politics. He's speaking out about humanity. All right, this is what we're talking about, humanity. What's going on in the black community these days? That's what LeBron James stands for. Growing up in Akron, Ohio, coming up really without a father figure in his life, knowing why the purpose why he opened up a I Promise school and wanted to provide such great people to help these kids in these black communities so they could get knowledge, so they could get up out of those communities and be something in life, because we go through so much that it get overlooked. Okay, and what I'm not about to sit up here and stand for is no athlete or no other person, especially from another country, tell one of our powerful, iconic figures how to speak up and how to be a black man in America and be a leader in America. I'm not about to tolerate it. And LeBron should have addressed him like the numbers on the house, like I said before, because look, we deal with so much oppression for over 400 plus years. You talk about things to nature where father figures are incarcerated for whatever reason and getting football numbers where they're not there in their children's lives nowadays, and now they need powerful, iconic figures like LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, Dwayne Wade, Maya Moore, all these beautiful athletes that have been standing on the front line to make sure that these kids get the best opportunity that others are getting around the world. So I don't want to hear that, man. At the end of the day, to me, I thought it was nonsense for him to lash out at LeBron. I thought he was clout chasing, and LeBron took it too lightly on him.
I agree with you. I think LeBron took it too lightly on him. But Max, to get back to what you're saying, Zlatan and how he tried to approach the matter. Listen, he was wrong off the bat. Because nobody should, and anybody that has a voice, particularly a voice is intelligent and as even keel and as thoughtful as LeBron James, should speak out on what the hell he wants to speak out about, because he's not coming from a perspective of ignorance and being misinformed or ill-informed about anything. That's number one. But number two, and more importantly, where this elevates the conversation to another level, is that this guy, this soccer player, okay, he spoke out when he felt like speaking out in terms of what his name connotated and how he felt he was treated because of it. He spoke out. So to me, it really, really resonated because, so it's okay for you to speak when you want to. But this brother right here, who is one of the most accomplished athletes in American history and who's been an activist in some respects and has been well known, and it's been well documented what LeBron is as a businessman, what his contributions have been to his community and beyond, what his contribution has been to America and beyond. Oh, excuse me. He's the one that you're going to sit up there and say, oh, excuse me, him nor any of these athletes, they shouldn't be speaking out. They should just be quiet and play. When you didn't do it, it says to me, you were saying, listen, you're a black man. You should be appreciative of what you have. Shut the hell up and go on about your business and just play. That, to me, is how I took what he said. And I don't think a tepid response was called for in that regard. I think it needed to be more formal. I'm not complaining about LeBron. Don't get me wrong. Everybody's got to be themselves. Please don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, if it were me, I'd have went all up in that, brother. I would have been making international headlines today. Directed at that dude for taking that position.
Look,
yes,
I think you know me, and if I see injustice, and we've done it on this show, I'll go at people. So I agree, there is a time for that. I think in this case, Zlatan is making a slightly different point than you think he's making. And while you may disagree with it, if you react immediately and emotionally to it, you'll never have the conversation. And this is what he's saying. What he said specifically is that people should stay in their lane. In this case, he was talking about politics specifically. Now, there's a huge overlap between social justice issues and politics, obviously, but they're not exactly the same thing. And while I agree with both of you, I think all three of us agree that how can you really stay out of politics, particularly in this country? There's enormous overlap, and especially in this last election year and what's gone on in this country over the last 4 years in particular. How do you stay out of politics and address these social issues? I don't know that Zlatan was talking about not touching social issues. He was talking about not touching politics. He is wrong-headed, I believe, for thinking, because in fact, in that same interview that I saw where he talked about Ali, he said he was asked about a certain political figure that we talked a lot about in the last 4 years, and he said what his comment one was nothing. In other words, if you ask him about a social issue, maybe he'll comment. But if you ask him about a political figure or politics specifically, he won't. We all may say that's wrong-headed. Here's why. In fact, no, you're wrong about LeBron James. Here's why. And that's what LeBron did. LeBron essentially addressed the point. But if you immediately have the knee-jerk, angry reaction and don't actually listen to what was said and respond, then we just have a lot of shouting. Then we can be righteously indignant because there's plenty to be indignant about. But in fact, he was actually saying, in a way, you're conflating social issues and politics. My response to him is, what do you mean conflating? Oftentimes, there's such an overlap, they're basically the same. And LeBron must discuss politics at times if he wants to address social issues.
Well, Max, politics has to come into play when we talk about in social justice, because the only way that we're going to have change is by getting certain people in office to make change, right? That's the only way we're going to stop having cops kneel on black folks' necks for 8 minutes. That's the only way we're going to stop having black folks being shot in the back by police officers, is by forming groups like more than the vote. So politics do come into play when it comes to a certain point of it. So, but my thing is this. You cannot, I don't care who you is, whether you think it's politics or it's social justice. If somebody is fighting for the right cause and somebody is being the voice for so many that can't speak out and can't be heard, and they're doing a great job in the community and being a powerful leader, I don't care who you are. You cannot tell that person to be quiet and shut up and dribble, because that's basically what he was saying to LeBron James. So whether LeBron James talk about politics or involved in politics and social justice, whatever the case may be, he's doing the right thing. And for a guy that does not even live in the United States of America, he cannot tell a black man how to be a black man in America, period.
Max Kellerman, let me get back to what you were saying a little bit earlier. A couple of points that needed to be addressed. Number one, I'm not shouting now, so let's be very, very clear about that. Nobody's shouting now. Number two, when you talk about drawing a line between politics and social issues, my comeback to that, Max Kellerman, is that I find it very, very interesting that those who disseminate messages towards other people want to dictate how it's received and responded to. That's one of the biggest problems that we have that exist in this nation. People want to run their mouths and speak and talk and say things, but then they want to complain at the same time about how it's received when you're talking about the other person. And what I'm saying is that I get your point about listening to the person and making sure you understand directly where they're coming from. But I would make an argument to you. You don't know definitively that that's where he was coming from. You can deduce it based on he's saying, and you could reach that conclusion, but you don't know definitively. So your interpretation of what he was trying to say may not be wrong, but neither mine.
Renee, I'd like
it might not be the case with
point.
Kendrick. I'm getting to it. My point to you is that you can't definitively say it, neither can I. And so now it comes back to who's the offended party. You have this black athlete who is without question an iconic figure with global cachet. And you're saying to him, you don't need to be speaking. Just play and ignore what's transpiring in your community. Ignore what's transpiring in your nation. While at the same time, you made sure to highlight what you wanted to highlight that transcended beyond the field of play, Zlatan. That's what you did. So your words weren't consistent. They were applicable to you, but they shouldn't be applicable to LeBron James, which is somebody like myself and Kendrick Perkins come in and we say, wait a damn minute. Who the hell you think you are? Because there's no consistency. Now, if you took what he said in a vacuum, Max, and you never took into account what he did for himself, you have a stronger point. But when you take into account what he did for himself and how you got a problem if LeBron James does it for himself, there's an inconsistency there, and it's wrong. It's not wrong for us to deduce why that might be.
Okay, I actually took notes on what you said because you made several points. I want to respond to them. I'll try to do it quickly. Sure. Number one, you're right. I don't know definitively. That's why you find out. You ask questions. You find out the follow-up, and you get more definitive answers. And I think if what you feel is that righteous indignation and respond emotionally, you won't ask the questions. You won't find out. I think we're all the poorer for it, number one. Number two, LeBron is the offended party here. And LeBron responded the way he felt was appropriate. And LeBron's sense of how to publicly respond to people is among the best I've ever seen. And I think that it was quite effective in this case. Number three, Zlatan, I agree with you guys that if this is his answer, look, I stayed out of politics. I mentioned social prejudices and stuff, but I stayed out of politics. And that's what I'm saying to LeBron or whoever else. Stay out of politics. That's a different field. That's different than saying, hey, I feel discriminated against in this community. That's kind of social activism versus politics. And I think reasonable people would tell him, look, you really can't do that. It's really not possible to genuinely try to respond to these issues, particularly Kendrick Perkins, as you mentioned, in this country, particularly around issues that affect African Americans, and not get into politics. But already now we're having a conversation about it. And by the way, if he turns out to be hard-headed and wrong-headed and stubborn and insulting about it, Well, okay, then you may respond in kind, but I don't think we're there yet. He simply said he's into politics. I stay out of politics. He should too. That's basically what he said. I disagree, but I don't think he needs to be castigated publicly for it.
Yeah, but Max, whether it's politics and social justice, racism, whatever the case may be, the world that we live in, and especially in our country right now, you can't tell nobody what the hell to say or how to speak on any damn thing, because if we have a powerful leader like LeBron James that's speaking out for so many and trying to do and get what's right and make sure that everybody have civil rights, whether that's voter suppression, whether that's making sure kids make it out of the hood, whether that's making sure that kids be able to see their father again because they're sentencing for a drug epidemic was handed out in football numbers. It don't matter what it is he's speaking out about. The world that we living in, you should be able to speak out on whatever the hell you want to. Now, I would never speak out on politics because I'm not educated enough to do that. But LeBron James is educated. He's very educated to speak on any level. And I think as a leader and what he has shown us throughout his career, he has the right to speak out on whatever the hell he feel like it. And who is this guy in a whole nother country to tell his African-American brother what he can and cannot speak on? That's the problem I have.
You're right, just a dude with an opinion, and it's wrongheaded.
Yeah, but we're
Really
responding.
strong, Kendrick. Really strong.
Hold on. What we're doing, Max, is we're responding to LeBron's response to it all.
Yep.
And we're not chastising LeBron in any way. What we're saying is that it transcends just LeBron. It speaks to blackness as well, because we don't believe that those kind of words would have been articulated to somebody of a different hue, from a different culture. We don't believe that. We don't believe that Tom Brady would have ever been told to shut up and play football, or Drew Brees, or Larry Bird, or somebody. We believe those kind of things are reserved for us because on far too many occasions, particularly when it comes to black excellence, people are more apt to believe that we should feel privileged. We should feel lucky and thankful grateful as opposed to individuals who actually earned the positions that we are in. That's why you see Kendrick Perkins and myself responding the way that we responded, because we've seen that kind of language emanating from people who don't look like us on many occasions.
I get it, and I no doubt, and I feel likewise. My point is here, think about LeBron's response. He said, I'm never going to just stick to sports. I'm educated on these issues. I also found out about you. You spoke on a similar issue, and I have essentially a moral responsibility given my platform. That's right. That's the right message to get across. Not just bad
It's an incredible discussion, but Max,